the sun, and this will be our year. Took a long time to come. Don't let go of my hand now, the darkness has gone. This will be our year. Took a long time to come. And I won't forget the way you held me up when I was down. And I won't forget the way you said, darling, I love you. You gave me faith to go on. Now we're there, and we've only just begun. This will be our year. Took a long time to come.
Hey, Tina.
Hey, Rich.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good.
I love that song.
It's a great song by the
It's a great
Zombies.
album.
It is. Their album, Odyssey and Oracle, it is one of my favorite albums of all time. It's just almost a perfect album from like 1968, I think.
So I yelled at you during our last Patreon episode, and I think you took that to heat.
I redeemed
So
myself.
you redeemed
You
yourself.
you did not like my song selection for the last Patreon episode, but it was appropriate. But this song I thought was appropriate looking forward to 2026. It's almost the new year. Optimistic sort of
Yeah,
view of
it's
the
a
world.
beautiful song. Do you want to explain what we do on our Patreon episodes really quick, in case anyone's confused?
Yeah, we usually use a different song, usually something that relates to the case.
Well, not always. Sometimes it's just what I'm in the mood for.
Yeah, it could
But I
just
think it's our
be-
compromise because I don't love our theme song, and
Right.
I know everyone else is always like, "Oh, I love your theme song. Don't change it." So it's kind of our little compromise that
Yeah.
we play 30 seconds of
and it's fun
a
to
different song.
mix it up
Yeah.
sometimes. It is the day after Christmas when we're recording this, and it is a dark and gloomy and stormy day out.
Yeah, very weird weather here
Yeah.
in Southeast Michigan.
Lightning and ice and all kinds of stuff. So
Yeah.
good day to stay home and keep warm. Did you enjoy our Christmas day yesterday?
I really did. We opened some presents. We ate way too much food. We watched a movie. We watched the lions self-destruct. It was a really nice day.
Oh, you had to bring up the line. Self-destructing.
Well, you may
I
just
had
watch the
forgotten
game.
about that. Yeah. That
Do you
was-
think the NFL puts too much pressure on teams that are doing well, like the Chiefs and the Lions?
Oh,
and
you
I'm
mean
sure there's
putting them
other
on
teams.
like Christmas Day or
Mhm.
Thanksgiving?
Yeah, or Monday night all the time.
they're professionals. They get paid a lot of money. I don't think it's like too much pressure to play on Christmas versus a regular Sunday, but I do feel kind of bad for them because it's a holiday and
Mhm.
they're basically working on that day.
Yeah.
But I really don't want to talk about the line.
Okay. Well, the
It
Netflix
was very sad.
broadcast was super awkward.
It was.
I'm just going to say that.
Yeah, it was not the best, but
What was your favorite gift that you got?
I liked a lot of the very nice and thoughtful gifts you got me, but one that sort of stands out is you bought me a watercolor kit.
Mhm.
It's like a book with some starter ideas for different things you can paint
In
and watercolors.
2026, I think we should have more craft nights.
I do too. It's good to be creative and try some artistic things.
Yeah. You didn't get me a watercolor book.
No, but I'm going
that's
to run
okay.
out
We
and
can
get you one.
share.
We can share. How about you? Any gifts that stand out? Did you
No,
like the robe that I
no.
got you?
You didn't give me a robe. Well, I'm wearing a gift that your sister and her husband got me. Do you want to read what it says?
It says, if I go missing, I want Keith Morrison to talk about how I light up a room.
Which is funny to me because one time I asked you, honey, do I light up a room? And you said, no, but you make your presence known, which really made me laugh and I think is quite
I don't remember
appropriate.
saying that, but
You don't remember
it's-
saying that?
But it is pretty funny.
Really, it sticks with me because I think it's true.
You do make your presence known. Well, you do light up every room that I see you in.
Oh, you're backpedaling now. I see.
No,
All
I-
right. Fair enough. Well, we hope you all had a very Merry Christmas. Last night before I went to bed, I was scrolling through Reddit, and it was pretty funny because a lot of people did not have a Merry Christmas.
No?
I think it was just a
Well.
lot of the subreddits I follow that like,
Mhm.
am I the asshole? And ones like that, where people were like, my mom was such a mean person to me all
Oh.
day. And there was a lot of those kind of posts. And I don't know what I did wrong, but my mom didn't. And it seemed like a lot of people talking about their mom.
Uh-huh.
And, Christmas can be really hard
Oh,
when
it
you're the
can be.
mom
Yeah.
because you work so hard and you feel like you're just disappointing people and maybe you feel a little less appreciated than,
Aw.
I'm not saying I felt like that. I'm just saying, I think a lot of women do.
Yeah.
You reach like your melting point on Christmas
No,
Day,
I know.
unfortunately.
Well, we all do really appreciate all that you do because you do a lot of hard work for Christmas and you
Well, you
make it
don't-
very nice.
Well, I appreciate your appreciation.
Would you like a snack?
No, I'm
No.
actually still full.
Okay, yeah. And I figured what I brought you is you're not going to be super excited about because
Oh
I
boy.
brought you 2 cookies
Oh
that
boy.
that I worked very hard to take off of the counter. They're cookies that you made, but they're my 2 favorites.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you like the cookies that I made.
Yeah, I brought you one of these. These are like sugar cookies with peppermint in them and frosting on them, and they are so amazing. And then I brought one of your chocolate chip cookies, which you also put holiday
yeah.
M&Ms in.
Well, I appreciate that effort, but I'm going to abstain from the snack today
Oh,
because
okay.
I honestly maxed out my stomach yesterday.
Okay, well, I'll just eat the
You can
snacks
just eat
then.
them.
All right, we'll be
Okay.
right back.
But they were both really good cookies.
Yes. Well, I won't ask you what you thought of the cookies because you abstained, but I'm giving them a 10 out of 10.
Thank
They're
you. I
amazing.
appreciate that. I kept making we made a lot of things and we made way too many things. I had the intention of going and bringing some to the neighbors, but I didn't, and now I feel like you don't really bring your neighbors cookies on
No.
December 26th because then it's
Here's
like
some old cookies for
yeah,
you.
obviously we didn't eat them all, so here's some cookies.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, today we are going to revisit the case of Barbara and Russell Stager,
The very first case that you ever did.
the very first case. And I went through the script and it was pretty bad. I'm just going to be blunt about it. We had no idea what we were doing. And so I wrote it in like a different tense and it wasn't great. So I did some work on it.
Okay.
I didn't like go overboard, but I did do a little bit of work on it.
Were there any developments to the case since we first recorded it?
Not that I could find.
Okay.
No. In the early morning hours of February 1st, 1988, in Durham, North Carolina, a 13-year-old boy called 911. My father had a gun and it went off, he said. Paramedics arrived to find Russell Stager, 40 years old, lying in bed, blood coming from his nose and mouth, and a bullet hole in the back of his head. He was still alive, but as doctors would soon find out, he was brain dead. He was taken off of life support and died later that day. His wife, Barbara Stager, 39 years old, was at the scene along with her 13-year-old son and Russell's adopted son, the one who called 911. While the paramedics were working on her husband, Barbara stood in the bedroom saying things like, "I wish he didn't have these guns. I kept telling him about these damn guns." She kept repeating things like that over and over. It was distracting to the paramedics to the point where once the police showed up, they asked, "Can you get her the hell out of here?" The officers took her to the kitchen and asked what happened. She told them that Russell had been hearing sounds outside the house recently and was worried about prowlers. He was going through a stage where he was keeping a gun with him all the time, in the car and even under his pillow. Barbara explained that she heard her son Jason get up to use the bathroom around 6 a.m., and her first thought was, "I hope Russell doesn't think it's a burglar and go for the gun." So just to be safe, she grabbed the gun from under the pillow. As she was pulling the gun out from under Russell's pillow, it went off. She said that she barely touched it. The initial thought by investigators was that Barbara seemed sincere and it was most likely a tragic accident. But that conclusion didn't last long. The very next day, Durham Police Detective Rick Buchanan got a call from Russell's ex-wife, a woman named Jo Lynn Snow. After their divorce, she and Russell eventually became friends and he had confided in her about things. So she called the police, saying, "I need to talk to you." She came into the police station and met with Detective Buchanan, bringing a letter with her. She was nervous and wanted to have everything written out. I won't read the whole letter, but here are a few of the most interesting parts. First, to the point of Russell's attitude towards guns. Russell completed Army basic training in the late 1960s, and I believe he's been in the Army Reserves for at least 10 years, maybe more. He received the best training this country has to offer in the use and proper storage of the handgun. Russell had a gun during our marriage, but I only saw it on maybe 2 occasions. It was kept safely in a drawer, unloaded. Russell had a very healthy respect for guns, and I remember his comments about accidental shootings and how they would never happen if people handled their guns with respect. He would never have slept with a loaded gun under his pillow. The police would later talk to some of Russell's fellow Army reservists, and they had the same thing to say about his training and his caution around guns. Second, Jo Lynn had some things to say about a possible motive. Russ found huge sums of money missing, and she could not account for it. He also thought she was having an affair and followed her one weekend morning to a parking lot where she parked her car, got out, and got into a man's car and immediately began heavy petting.
Ew.
But then came the most shocking revelation of all. Russell feared for his safety with his wife Barbara. Russell no longer believed that her first husband's wound was accidental. He too died from a gunshot wound, and Barbara was the only person with him. Russell always said that if anything suspicious happened to him, that he would want me to remember his telling me that. Russell thought Barbara did not have a firm grasp on reality.
You said initially the police thought that Barbara's story sounded valid.
Plausible, yeah.
But then when they found out that her first husband also died from a questionable gunshot wound, that must have changed the course of the investigation.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure they would have eventually found that out anyway, but to find it out from, Russell's ex-wife the next day must have been quite a shock.
And knowing that he shared all this information with his first wife.
That's a little eye-opening.
Yeah.
We will talk more about Jolene's letter and about Barbara's first husband in a bit, but first let's talk about Barbara's background. Barbara Terry was raised in Durham. Her dad, James, worked for Duke Power Company, and her mom, Marva, was a secretary at Duke Medical Center, where Barbara would also eventually work. By all accounts, the family was hardworking, church-going, country folk with strong values.
Country folk?
Yeah.
You think we're country folk?
Maybe
we kind of are.
A little bit, maybe. Barbara was their first child, born in 1948. By all accounts, she was shy and obedient, worked hard to get good grades, was noted for good behavior at school, although her 8th grade teacher did note that she was emotionally immature. The family was active at the same Baptist church that her father had grown up in. Barbara attended Sunday school, Sunday services, prayer meetings, Bible school in the summers, very much a traditional Christian upbringing. Just before 9th grade, the family moved to a new home out in the country north of Durham on 7 acres. She loved kids and wanted to become an elementary school teacher. She didn't drink, she didn't smoke, she didn't curse, didn't talk back, and was always home when she was supposed to be, seemingly the model child, especially for her conservative religious parents. She had good SAT scores and got accepted at Appalachian State Teachers College, about 200 miles from Durham. It was there during her freshman year that Barbara met Larry Ford, her first real boyfriend. Although Barbara had grown up in this kind of repressed religious environment, she and Larry had sex the first time they were alone together in the instrument closet of the band room at school.
Oh.
Barbara was eager for the relationship to turn serious, while Larry was more reticent and even a bit turned off by the fact that she was pushing him very aggressively. During this time, there was a strange incident that happened with Barbara at school. She came back to her dorm room on a Saturday night and seemed sort of off. Barbara's roommate asked her, "Are you all right?" But Barbara just started making weird animal-like noises and sat on the edge of her bed shaking her head and moaning. Her roommate couldn't get anything out of her and finally went to get help from the dorm mother. No one could get a response from her, and so they finally took her to the hospital, where she was sedated and kept overnight for observation. The next day, she seemed fine. It was very bizarre behavior. Barbara's roommate felt like this had something to do with her relationship with Larry, that maybe Larry was trying to pull away, and this was how Barbara reacted.
So was she diagnosed with anything?
Not that I'm aware of. It seemed like it was just sort of a one-off incident, and she seemed fine the next day, so they were like, okay, but it's a very odd thing to react that way or to behave that way.
A few months into their relationship, Larry told Barbara that he wanted a break, but a week or so later, she called him to let him know that she was pregnant. She told him that he didn't have to marry her, but Larry wanted to do what he believed was the right thing. He knew this would make his goal of finishing college more challenging, but he asked Barbara to marry him. They hastily arranged a wedding in front of a few friends and family members in May 1968. Friends noted that the event seemed subdued and lacking in joy. After the wedding, Barbara and Larry both returned to their dorm rooms to wrap up the final week of classes for the semester.
It's quite a way to start a marriage, isn't it?
Yeah, you would think maybe you would wait till after finals.
I mean, it just sounds like it was really, this is 1968, and when somebody got pregnant out of wedlock, depending on your family and everything.
Wanted to get married as soon as possible. When the semester ended, Larry and Barbara drove to his parents' home, as they hadn't yet met Barbara. They tried to be welcoming to their new daughter-in-law, but the situation was uncomfortable for everyone. And it got more awkward when Barbara would start passionately kissing Larry in front of them. Larry's mom, Doris, later recalled, "I never had seen anything in my life that came close to that." They felt like Barbara had no modesty or sense of proper behavior. The marriage seemed doomed from the beginning. Larry had reservations going into the marriage, causing him to become withdrawn as time went on. And Barbara seemed to have two strong compulsions that would make Larry more and more uncomfortable over time. The first was her strong sexual urges, and the second was her compulsion for spending money. But in the early days, they tried to make things work. Larry got a job at a manufacturing plant for the summer, and Barbara got a job at a hospital doing administrative work, and they prepared for the coming baby. When fall came, Larry went back to school, where Barbara continued to work and live in the mobile home they had bought. It was not an ideal situation. He was back at school living in the dorms, while she was working and living an hour and a half away in a mobile home. She was resentful, knowing that Larry was living like a single college student. Barbara gave birth to a boy in December 1968, and they named him James Bryan after Barbara's father, but they called him Brian. They settled into this life with Larry trying to finish school while supporting the family, Barbara eventually working as a bank clerk. While working at the bank, Barbara started flaunting her sexuality, making her female coworkers uncomfortable. She often wore revealing miniskirts to work and would blatantly flirt with male employees and customers. One of her coworkers later said, "Barbara could be with a group of women, acting perfectly normal, but if a man came around, she would suddenly become an entirely different person, all aglow." It was really something to see. She developed a reputation around the bank as being loose, and indeed she did have affairs with customers. She had at least 3 relationships with other men during the course of her marriage to Larry. Larry first got wind of Barbara's deceptions when she told Larry she was spending the weekend with some girlfriends at her parents' beach cottage. After she left, Larry got a late-night phone call. It was a woman's voice, and she just said, "Do you know where your wife is?"
It's interesting, in a number of cases we've covered, people find out about their spouse being unfaithful through an anonymous phone call or an anonymous letter or something like that. It must be very jarring to get that phone call.
I'm so grateful I have never received such a message. It would be really upsetting.
Yes.
So Larry at this point is very suspicious, and he tried to track Barbara down. There was no phone at the beach house, so he called the police in the area, asking them to check on the house. They reported back that the house was empty. There was no one staying there that weekend. What do you think he said to them?
I don't know. I guess he just called and said, "I'm worried about my wife. Worried my wife is cheating on me. Could you go check the house, please?"
Larry never found out where Barbara was that weekend, but he knew that she was lying to him. Still, the couple bought a house together, and Barbara worked hard to furnish the house perfectly. She was, in fact, obsessed with perfection, no matter the cost. This is where Barbara's spending first became an issue for the couple. Whatever she bought for the house had to be the best. While Larry was still in school and the couple's income limited, they soon sank into debt so deep that Larry couldn't imagine how they could ever get their heads above water again. They had a second child, Jason, in 1974. When he was 3 months old, Barbara and Larry separated. While initially in the relationship, Larry had been the reluctant one. Now he was the one pushing to reconcile. At the same time, his family was telling him, "Maybe you should just move on." Larry and Barbara did end up reconciling in 1975, but nothing really changed. Barbara had more affairs and went on more spending sprees. So as far as you know, Larry didn't have any retaliatory affairs.
Not that I know of.
Fast forward to 1978. Barbara called the minister at their church and told him that she was worried that someone was following her home from work at night. She wanted to buy a gun for protection and needed a character reference to get a gun permit. She bought a .25 caliber pistol and had a friend teach her how to use it.
I found it interesting that she had to get a character reference to buy a gun. I've never heard of that. And this was,
1960s,
early
19,
70s
oh,
or
yeah.
mid 70s. But I think gun laws have probably changed
Loosened
quite a bit.
up a little bit.
Yeah.
That same night, after Barbara purchased and learned how to use her new gun, Larry came home from his Taekwondo class and wound up dead, shot in the chest. He was just 29 years old. We'll be back after a break.
The call came in at 12:36 a.m. on March 22nd, 1978. When police arrived, Barbara met them at the door saying, "My husband's been shot. He's upstairs. I think he's dead." The first responders found Larry lying on his back in bed. When they raised his pajama top, the cause of death was apparent, a bullet hole in his chest. Near his left hip was a loaded clip for a semi-automatic pistol. The gun itself was lying on the carpet beside the bed as if it had fallen from his right hand. Barbara told investigators she had gone downstairs to sleep on the couch that night because Larry had been tossing and turning due to getting kicked in the groin during his Taekwondo class. While she was down on the couch, she heard a gunshot and went up to find Larry bleeding and gasping for breath.
Okay, I'm sorry. I have never been kicked in the groin, so is that a pain that you would continue to have? I thought it was like really, really severe pain for a few minutes and then it passed.
I think it could make you uncomfortable for a while afterwards. The police believed Barbara's story. They figured that Larry probably wanted to look at the gun because it was new, took the clip out, figuring that would make it safe, but didn't realize that a round was still in the chamber. You hear about that happening a lot, so it did sound feasible. You do hear about that kind of thing happening a lot, where you take the clip out of the gun and you think, oh, I've just taken the bullets out of the gun. But if there's still a bullet in the chamber, the gun can go off when you fire it.
Okay. I did not realize that.
The police went ahead and had the body sent to the morgue, which is not standard procedure if there's any suspicion at all that a crime has been committed. So apparently the police on the scene didn't have any doubts as to Barbara's story. Also, no autopsy was done. Larry's death was treated as an accidental death. Even though the police initially concluded that it was an accident, Barbara's behavior after Larry's death made Larry's family suspicious. She didn't show any emotion and she acted cold toward Larry's family. During the viewing at the funeral home, Larry's brother saw Barbara standing by the coffin with her mother, and according to him, she was crying and saying, "What have I done?" over and over until her mother hushed her. She was also acting extremely social at the funeral home, flitting around and talking to everyone. And right after the funeral, she started giving away all of Larry's stuff to people who were there. All of these things, along with the fact that Larry had grown up around guns and learned how to handle them when he was a boy, and then again later in the Marines, made Larry's family suspicious that Barbara may have killed him. Now, this is kind of a strange aside, but 15 days after Larry was killed, Barbara's former boss, a woman named Kay Pugh, and her friend, Brenda Wilmoth, were both shot by Brenda's husband, a guy named Tommy Wilmoth. Kay died in that shooting. When he was arrested, Tommy told police that he believed that Kay, Brenda, and Barbara were involved in some sort of lesbian love triangle, and that they all planned to kill their husbands. It's a little convoluted, I know, but this was basically Barbara's boss and a friend of hers that were shot by this other guy. And basically they were prompted because Barbara's husband died, and he believed in his mind that these three women were all going to kill their husbands.
Do you know where they were shot?
I think they were in a car together. I'm not sure exactly, but I don't think there was any evidence to support his theory that there was this lesbian love triangle between these three women. I think it was all kind of in his mind.
Do you think it was opportunistic because Larry had already been killed for this other guy to use that as an excuse? Like, oh, I was scared for my life. I thought my wife was going to try to kill me.
It could have been potentially, but the fact that he actually shot and killed, he shot his wife, she did not die, but he shot and killed this other woman as well. Seems like he wouldn't have done that. It seems like he genuinely had something maybe wrong in his mind.
Yeah.
So this shooting by Tommy Wilmoth actually caused the police to take another look at Larry's death, even though they had decided it was a tragic accident. But this made them think maybe there actually was more to it than that. During their investigation, there were a couple of things that raised suspicions. In her first police interview, the detectives found Barbara cagey and unwilling to give much information. They asked if she would be willing to take a lie detector test. She said that she would consider it, but then her lawyer called back a few days later and said no, she wouldn't be doing that. Second, detectives did a swab on Larry's hands while his body was at the morgue, and the forensics analyst didn't find any trace of gunpowder residue. In his opinion, Larry hadn't fired the gun that killed him, so the only way it could have killed him by accident is if he had dropped it, which was very unlikely based on where he was shot and the angle of the bullet and so forth. At this point, the detectives decided to have Larry's body exhumed to do an actual autopsy. Their analysis showed that Larry was shot at close range, maybe even with the muzzle touching his chest, but they couldn't know that for certain because the body had been cleaned at the funeral home. They reclassified the death as a homicide, but they didn't have any solid evidence against Barbara. They also couldn't rule out that an intruder may have shot Larry. Eventually, the investigation ran out of steam and no one was ever charged.
Why couldn't they rule out that an intruder may have shot Larry?
I mean, I don't think they had any evidence that there was an intruder, but they also couldn't rule it out. They just didn't have anything to tell them that that wasn't a possibility, I guess.
Were there any additional fingerprints on the gun?
Not that I read about. After Larry's death, Barbara and her 2 kids moved in with her parents back in Durham. This was over an hour away from where she and Larry had lived. In Durham, no one but her family knew the circumstances of Larry's death, and that suited Barbara. With $70,000 in life insurance money, Barbara set her sights on buying a new home in Durham, ideally in her parents' neighborhood, so they could help with the children. The first house she found was a neat little bungalow just 2 blocks from her parents. The owner of the house, a man named Russell Stager, and his estranged wife, Jo Lynn. Barbara liked the house, but Russ wasn't certain he wanted to sell. He decided to take the house off the market and stay. Barbara, meanwhile, found another house, and it happened to be just across the street from Russ. Russell Stager's real name was Allison Russell Stager III, but to avoid confusion with his dad, he went by Rusty or Russ. He was born and raised in Durham. Russ was a natural athlete. He loved football and baseball especially. A back injury in high school took him out of football, but he did play baseball and decided during high school that his dream was to become a high school baseball coach. Russ went to Mount Olive Junior College, now called University of Mount Olive, which is about 90 miles southeast of Durham. During college, he would regularly travel home or to other nearby towns to attend Durham High School baseball, football, and basketball games. It was at one of these games in Raleigh that he met Jo Lynn Ellen, who would eventually become his first wife. Russ was struggling a bit in college and thought about dropping out, but with the Vietnam War going on, he decided a better choice was to join the Army Reserves. The Army sent him to South Carolina for 6 months of training, and after that he transferred to Campbell University, where he majored in physical education. He graduated in 1972, did a student teaching stint in Cary, North Carolina, and then applied to the Durham City School District, where he got a job as a phys ed teacher and assistant coach at the junior high school. By all accounts, Russ was born to coach. He was a natural leader, and he acted not just as a coach, but as a mentor to the kids he coached. His door was always open. His players not only respected him, but really loved him. He used his own money and also organized raffles and bake sales to help buy equipment for kids who couldn't afford it. After getting settled into his job, he and Jo Lynn got married in 1974, and soon after they bought a small house in Durham. The honeymoon was over pretty quickly, though. Only a year or so after they got married, Jo Lynn heard rumors that Russ might be involved with a student and saw him holding hands with a teenage girl late one night. They fought. Russ made lame excuses. He said he was trying to help a troubled student, and they patched things up. However, that was the beginning of the end. Jo Lynn realized that Russ was still basically trapped in high school from a maturity standpoint. His whole life revolved around sports, and she didn't really care at all about sports. They didn't like each other's friends, and ultimately they realized they just didn't have much in common. So 4 years after they married, they separated.
Not long after this, Russ met Barbara when she came to look at the house that he had up for sale after Jo Lynn moved out. As mentioned earlier, she didn't buy his house, but ended up moving in just across the street. Russ and Barbara didn't end up getting together right away. In fact, Russ was actually seeing a former student of his. This was a secret because she was only 17 when they started seeing each other. Russ was 30.
Very inappropriate. I think it goes to the point of what Jo Lynn was saying, that Russ was kind of trapped in high school. Like his maturity level was sort of still a high school student.
Yeah, this is highly disturbing. Did Jo Lynn go to the authorities at all or tell someone in this school district?
I don't think so.
Were they openly dating?
Not until after she got done with high school.
During the summer after she graduated high school, Russ told her that he loved her and wanted to go public with their relationship. He said he wanted to marry her and build a life together. She thought that she was in love with Russ, but she also wanted to live up to her parents' expectations and go to college. So the young girl did go off to college in another state, but Russ continued seeing her on weekends. She came home for a couple of weekends and went to see Russ at Durham high school football games that he was coaching. After one of these games, she was introduced to Barbara, a new friend of Russ's. Russ told his young girlfriend that Barbara was just a friend who had recently lost her husband, but it was clear to those around them that Barbara was hot and heavy for Russ. She was after him, there could be no doubt. About how old is Barbara at this time?
I think she was right around Russ's age, so she would have been, I think, 29.
Okay.
He was 30.
Russ pressured his girlfriend to marry him, but she ultimately decided that she couldn't. She loved Russ, but she knew her parents would never accept it. Also, she was in college and living her life. She wanted to be young, date, have fun, and enjoy her college years. Good for her. Russ was crushed, but he wasn't alone for long. Barbara saw her opportunity, and within weeks they were dating, even attending church together on Sunday mornings. Things moved fast, and the couple married in March 1979, just a few days after his divorce to Jolynn was final, and just 5 days before the first anniversary of Larry Ford's death. Barbara's children were 11 and 5 at this point. Russ, who loved kids, adopted the boys and, by all accounts, was completely devoted to them. Barbara's money troubles didn't end with Larry's death and the insurance payout. Early on in her relationship with Russell, Barbara was still working at the bank, and her cash drawer kept winding up short. $100 here, $357 there, and $500 missing from a coworker's drawer that Barbara had access to. That was all followed by a cash advance that she didn't repay, and house payment checks were bouncing. Her managers were looking into all of these things, asking her questions, while she made excuses and generally tried to avoid them. At one point during all of this, she said she was going to be out for some minor surgery. Her supervisor suspected that she was lying and called the hospital where she was supposedly having the surgery. They told him, nope, no surgery was scheduled for Barbara. When she got back to work, they called her in and told her that the jig was up. No more excuses. But they offered her a deal. If she would resign, they wouldn't press charges. And she agreed. After that, Barbara got a job at a radio station to sell ad space, but she never sold anything. She kept making excuses, saying that she was just about to close some big account, and then something would always happen. Turns out they were basically paying her to go out and goof around. Her boss, a guy named Harry, didn't want to fire her because he was a friend of both hers and Russ's. Ultimately, she quit the job because she said she had a new source of income. And that new source of income, as Barbara told her friends, was a book. Yes, Barbara was writing a novel called Untimely Death, a fictionalized account of her first husband's death. We have had several cases where this has happened,
Yes, I know.
and it's...
I think people like killers, they can't get it out of their mind and they just want to write it down. They want to confess without confessing, I think.
I think in a lot of the cases, they think that they're criminal masterminds.
Yes, that too.
So Barbara told her friends about it, but wouldn't show anyone her draft. But she sent it to Doubleday Publishing Company, who loved it so much they offered her a deal. They gave her a whopping $400,000 advance.
That's about $1.8 million in
This
today's
cannot be true.
dollars.
Not only that, but they told her that there was interest in a movie deal from a major studio.
It's amazing. First time author sends in a draft.
That's very impressive, although I know this can't be true. She took the letter from Doubleday on their letterhead to the bank and used it to secure a big loan, which she then used to join a swanky country club. You may not be surprised to hear that she soon defaulted on the loan. Because these are things that you could get away with in the 1970s that you can't get away with today.
Yep.
So the loan officer was suspicious and called Doubleday, sharing with them that the letter that Barbara had used to secure the loan. The people at Doubleday told him they had no idea about this letter, and the person who signed it didn't exist. It turns out that Barbara actually got a rejection letter from Doubleday. Undeterred, she cut and pasted the letterhead. Physically, this was before Microsoft Word, and created the forgery herself. It gets even crazier because her friends, including Harry from the radio station and his wife, who were good friends with both Russ and Barbara, started to think that Barbara had made this whole thing up about the book. No one, including Russell, had read it, yet she was claiming all of this stuff. Her friends even went so far as to tell her they were planning a big publication party for her, but she couldn't tell them an actual date of publishing. Coincidentally, Harry actually knew someone that worked for Doubleday, so he called her up. She checked into it and told Harry, nope, we're not working on anything with anyone called Barbara Stager. So Harry felt obliged to tell his friend Russ about this. He sat him down and said, Russ, I hate to tell you this, but there is no book. Russ just sat there in silence for a second, then said, well, I guess we're lucky she's got the job at the radio station. He didn't even know that Barbara had quit her job. Harry told him, buddy, she hasn't worked there for months. Russ started crying because she had been telling him every day she was off to work. He had no idea how she was spending her days.
It really takes a lot of gall to do a lie that big. It stresses me out. I just can't even imagine, like, yeah, I'm going to work every day. And no, I'm really not going to work every day. And I've got a $400,000 cash advance. No.
Did she have some money from the bank or not?
Well, she got the loan from the bank because she told them she had this, advance coming.
And it was $400,000, the loan?
I don't think the loan was for that amount. I think the $400,000 was what she said the advance was going to be. So she used that as security, but I don't know the exact amount of the loan.
So you might be wondering if there was a book at all. And actually, Barbara had started writing a book. She had an outline and a first chapter. As we mentioned before, the book is a fictional account of her first husband's death, but really it was focused on her own trials and tribulations, losing her husband and father of her children, and also being suspected of murder.
I wish I could have found a draft of the book because I really would have loved to have read it, but I did not. I do know that by all accounts it's very amateurish and pretty cringy.
Barbara's lies about the book and her job at the radio station were only the beginning. Finance wasn't Russ's strong suit, so once he and Barb married, he turned over management of the family finances to her. He got his paycheck every 2 weeks and turned it over to Barbara. But she didn't care how much money was coming in. She was spending like there was no tomorrow. Her credit cards were pushed to their limits and beyond. She got loans to pay off other loans. She took out a second mortgage on their house. Russ was unaware of how deeply in debt they were until one night, after Barb had gone to bed, he happened upon a cardboard box tucked away behind a chair in the family room. The box was crammed with unpaid bills, some of which he knew about, others that he thought had been paid long ago. It slowly started to dawn on him that their finances were in dire straits. It wasn't just the money that Barbara was lying about. She was also back to her old ways, cheating on Russ. She had gotten a job as a secretary at a company called Brame Specialty Company. There, she took up with a 27-year-old salesman. He later said that Barbara was voracious in her sexual appetites and seemed to feel no guilt about it. Russell learned about this affair when he happened to spot Barbara's car in an empty parking lot. He pulled in, confirmed the car was hers, and looked around. Why had Barb left her car in this big empty parking lot? Suspicious, he pulled into a lot across the street and surreptitiously kept an eye on the car while he waited for her to return. Sure enough, a car soon pulled up next to Barb's car. Russ could see that a man was driving, with Barb in the passenger seat. He watched as they started to kiss passionately. The couple was startled when Russ pulled his car up next to theirs. The man sped away quickly after Barb exited his car. A couple of days later, Barbara told her boyfriend that she had smoothed things over with her husband and there was no reason for them to break off their affair. Imagine the panic of her 27-year-old boyfriend when he saw Russ pull up next to his car.
Oh, yeah, I can only imagine. I think he was married also.
Nice.
Yeah.
We'll be back after a break.
After learning about Barbara's affairs and her other lies, Russ turned to his ex-wife, JoLynn. The two had lost touch with each other for a few years after JoLynn remarried and moved to Chicago. But late in 1982, after learning about some of Barbara's deceptions, Russ reached out to JoLynn. They chatted amiably a few times, and then when JoLynn and her husband moved back to North Carolina, Russ showed up one day at her apartment. She could tell that he was troubled and invited him in. Soon he poured out everything. The lies about Barbara's book deal, their financial troubles, the affair. He told Jolynn that he had thought about leaving, but didn't want to because of the boys. He loved them deeply and didn't want them to lose another father. He also told Jolynn what he knew about Barbara's first husband. He said he was beginning to wonder if it really was an accident. Then he left her with a chilling request. "I know it sounds crazy," he said, "but if anything ever happens to me, I want you to look into it." But just like Russ preached to the players he coached to never give up, he resolved to work on his marriage. He was determined. He convinced Barb to rededicate themselves to God, the church, and each other. They began teaching Sunday school together and got deeply involved in all of the church's activities. It seemed to help. Their relationship improved and they started thinking about the future. They decided to buy a new house together, despite Russell's concerns about their finances.
So was Russ faithful during his marriage to Barbara?
As far as I know, I didn't read anything about him being unfaithful, but his past, dating young girls makes me a little bit concerned that maybe he
Right.
wasn't.
I'm having a hard time reconciling what kind of person
Yeah.
Russ really was.
Yeah. Barbara got a promotion at her work, one that gave her flexibility to go back to college 16 years after she had dropped out to have her first child. At the same time, Russ went back to school to work on his master's degree. Russ finished his master's degree in physical education in the spring of 1987, while Barb got another promotion at work. At the same time, she was doing well in her classes, maintaining a 3.7 grade point average. It seemed like things were going well, but as 1987 progressed, the couple once again started finding themselves underwater financially. They refinanced their home, and Barb once again started taking out loans to pay off other loans. She was writing checks that bounced, and soon the unpaid overdraft charges began to mount. As 1987 transitioned to 1988, people noticed that Russ's mood had changed. He seemed quiet and withdrawn, not himself. That brings us back to February 1st, 1988, the morning of Russell's death. We've already covered the circumstances of Russ's shooting, but let's do a quick recap of Barbara's story. She said that Russell had been worried about prowlers after hearing noises and had started keeping a gun with him at all times, even sleeping with a loaded gun under his pillow. When she heard her son get up to use the bathroom around 6 a.m., she was worried that Russell would think it was a burglar, so she reached under his pillow and pulled the gun out. Inexplicably, the gun fired, hitting Russ in the back of the head. Kevin Wilson, who was one of the lead EMTs at the scene and coincidentally knew Russell and Barbara pretty well, they went to the same church, had socialized together, and so on. He asked if he could do anything for Barbara. He knew Russ's parents, so he asked, "Do you want me to go get them or get the minister from their church?" Barbara answered sharply, "No, don't call anybody. I don't want you to do anything." Wilson was kind of shocked by how abrupt her reaction was, but he just said, "Okay, sorry, just trying to help." While investigators initially bought her account, the next day when Jolynn came forward, they knew that they needed to take a deeper look.
So Jolynn must have been really upset about this situation.
Yeah.
Russ had predicted his death to her.
Yeah, for sure.
To be involved in this level, and she obviously had cared about him a great deal.
Yeah.
A really hard position for her to be in.
Yep.
The detectives immediately began pursuing several avenues in the investigation. First, could they corroborate Russ's mindset about guns and prowlers? Did he tell other people about hearing noises in the neighborhood? Was he the kind of guy who would sleep with a gun under his pillow? Asking Russell's friends and acquaintances, it became clear that he hadn't talked to anyone about his fear of prowlers. Not only that, he knew how to handle a gun. He was in the Army Reserve, had extensive gun training, and everyone who worked with him in the reserves said that Russ treated guns with a healthy respect. He knew the proper way to handle and store a gun, and would never sleep with a loaded pistol under his pillow. The second avenue of investigation had to do with motive. Did Barbara have enough reason to want him dead? Marital problems, money, etc.? Was there any history of violence in the marriage? This too became obvious once the police began asking around. They learned of the couple's money troubles, Barbara's affairs, and her deception. This was all helpful, but it was also circumstantial. They needed to look at the forensics. Did the evidence match Barbara's story? A few things the police looked at here. First, was the shell casing where it should have been? It was found just a few inches from Russ's head. When police tested the gun, they found the spent shell casing always ejected between 2 and 6 feet to the right and back of the gun. So it should have been somewhere more in the middle or the bottom of the bed. It almost looked like the scene was staged. Second, gunpowder should have been located on the sheets if the gun was fired close to the sheets as Barbara had claimed. Barbara had washed the sheets the day after the shooting, after the police initially declared it accidental. However, gunpowder residue normally would still show up even after washing, but testing showed no gunpowder residue at all. There was no gunpowder and no cinch marks, which might also be expected on the sheets, blanket, pillowcases, and mattress cover. I think it's odd that she chose to wash the sheets. If something, God forbid, happened to you, I would probably throw the whole bed away. Like, I wouldn't be able to sleep on it.
Yeah, I probably would do the same.
Third, there were no gunpowder particles around the wound in Russ's head. If he was shot from 2 feet, which is the way Barbara described it, there would have been signs of powder on his head. Fourth, the trajectory of the bullet was wrong. The autopsy showed that the bullet entered Russ's head at a downward angle, which contradicts what Barbara said about the gun going off as she pulled it away from the pillow. Last but not least, firearms experts did a trigger pull test on the gun and found that it took 4 pounds of force to pull the trigger. You know how they say that some guns have a hair trigger? Well, this gun wasn't one of them. It would be really hard for the gun to just go off without a concerted effort.
I think all of this forensic evidence was really critical because in a situation where somebody is shot and basically you just say it was an accident, the gun went off, it's really hard to like contradict that, right? If Barbara says that, it's like, well, what are you going to do to say that she isn't telling the truth? And I think all these details were really key to building a case against her.
Right. Unless dropped, I think it's pretty rare for a gun to just go off on its own.
I think some guns do have what's called a hair trigger where it's, easier to pull the trigger. But yeah, you're right. Without intentionally pulling the trigger, I think it would be hard to imagine.
Weeks passed as police gathered all this evidence, still letting Barbara believe it was all routine. In the meantime, she kept calling and bugging them about getting the final report so that Russ's life insurance could be paid out. Finally, in April, 2.5 months after Russ was killed, they went to a grand jury and got the go-ahead. On first-degree murder charges, Barbara Staker was arrested that day.
In April 1989, 2 weeks before Barbara's trial was set to begin, a brand new piece of evidence was found. If prosecutors thought they had a solid case already, this was just the icing on the cake. This new evidence was an audio tape. A student at Durham High School, where Russ taught and coached baseball, was gathering uniforms out of the dryer and happened to see a cassette tape under one of the bleacher stalls. He was curious, of course, so he took it home, listened to it, and recognized Coach Stager's voice. It turned out to be a tape that Russ made 3 days before he died, talking about his concerns. We don't have the actual audio, but here are some of the interesting parts of the tape. Remember, this is Russ speaking. The last few nights during sleep, Barbara has woken me up to give me some kind of medication. I've not taken it. Last night, she woke me up and gave me what she said was 2 aspirin, but this was like 4:30 in the morning. She stood there to see if I took it. I did not take it. I placed it under the bed. She came back to check and make sure I had taken it, saying she wanted something to drink from what I was drinking. This morning, before I got up, she was over around there on the side, acts like she was looking for what I supposedly took last night. Now, this was the night of January the 28th, a Thursday night, so she stayed there looking to see if I had taken the stuff this morning. I got it out of there, although she was looking very close to see if I was trying to retrieve it. She made the comment that, "You didn't take that, those aspirins I gave you." I said, "Yeah, I did." Well, I took the 2 capsules to Eckerd's Pharmacy at Forest Hills, and they said it was sleeping pills. Now, if I was already asleep at 4:30 in the morning, why would someone wake me up to give me 2 sleeping pills? Seems like a very good question, Russell. Later in the tape, he talked about another incident with pills. Back to Wednesday night, January the 27th, Barbara had given me something that was supposedly for sinuses and some aspirin that supposedly was Nuprin. And about 5 that morning, I woke up and I was feeling terrible. I was hurting real bad around my eyes, under my eyes, my temple, and I really wonder if what she gave me was sinus medication and Nuprin. I had a real bad case of the cottonmouth. Even after all this, when she woke up and saw I was in pain, she tried to give me some more stuff, which I wouldn't take. He goes on in the tape to talk about money stuff and how he's not seeing credit card bills anymore, and how the police showed up to serve some kind of warrant because of a bill that she didn't pay, and how she took money from the radio station but never really showed up for work. He also talked about how he saw Barbara years ago making out with some guy in her car. Then he went on to talk about Barbara's first husband. I don't know what happened, but according to his parents, there was some foul play going on. He supposedly accidentally shot himself in their bedroom with a pistol. Now, I have no idea what really went on, what really happened. She was there when it happened, and so were the boys. My question is, did her first husband, Larry Ford, accidentally shoot himself? And then at the end of the tape, he says, I really hope that I'm being paranoid about this stuff that's going on, but I really wonder. This is Russ Steger. This is January 29th, 1988, 10 minutes of 2.
My first impression is a student found this tape.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine you're in high school and you find this tape of probably a coach you really cared about.
Yeah.
Must have been super upsetting.
Yeah.
Like, what do I do with this now?
Yeah, extremely. And just for Russ to have made this tape like 3 days before she shot him, you can only imagine what must have been going through his mind to feel that desperate to put something down in tape to talk through his thoughts about this. It's just wild that the police found this too.
Well, and waking him up in the middle of the night to give him pills, that doesn't make any sense at all. Who would, like, under what conditions? Why would she be handing him pills?
Yeah, it makes absolutely no sense at all. Like, yeah, wake up and take some aspirin. Like, why?
Yeah, why would I take
was
aspirin?
sleeping.
Unless had he been sick?
I think he had some sinus issues and stuff, but it wasn't like he was sleeping soundly in the middle of the night. And why would you wake up your husband?
Well, and again, he's suspicious enough to take it to the pharmacy and say, what is this?
Yeah.
This happens so many times in cases that we cover that, the other spouse is really worried for their own life.
Yeah.
And it's so sad that he saw the writing on the wall, but he was not able to get out fast enough.
Yeah. At Barbara's trial, her defense tried to keep both her first husband's death and the audio tape of Russ out of the trial, but the judge allowed them both, along with all of Barbara's financial dealings. It only took the jury 40 minutes to come back with a guilty verdict. You know how juries usually start by taking a straw poll? In this case, everyone was on the same page, guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to death, but that was later overturned on a technicality, and it was changed to life in prison with the possibility of parole. No one has ever been arrested or charged in relation to Larry Ford's death. That really surprises me that after Barbara was convicted, that they didn't reopen that investigation, because it just seems very clear that she probably, it's almost the same identical situation.
But they had reopened it in the past, remember?
Yeah, they did, but it just surprised me that at this
Maybe
point
they just knew that there was just not enough evidence. But
I guess so. But it's sad that Larry Ford never got justice, and Barbara, she's in prison for life, but with the possibility of parole. Barbara is now 77 years old. She did have her first chance at parole in 2009 after serving 20 years. However, her parole has been denied each time. She's currently incarcerated at the North Carolina Correctional Institute for Women in Raleigh. Rest in peace, Larry Ford and Russ Steger.
The judge at Barbara's trial, he allowed in some evidence that I think other judges might not have allowed in, like about her first husband and their financial status.
And the audio tapes.
And
from Russ.
So I think this judge should take some of the credit for her getting the conviction.
Yeah, I think so. Do you think it was wrong that he allowed those in, or you just think it's one of those situations where one judge might rule one way and another might rule a different way?
No, I feel like she's definitely guilty of both of these crimes, so I'm glad that he allowed it in.
And all those things seem very relevant as well, so I think it made sense for those
but
to be
it is surprising
allowed.
a lot of times that judges don't allow evidence that we feel is relevant.
I know, and we're neither of us are lawyers or legal scholars, but sometimes it
How dare you?
but sometimes it just doesn't seem to make sense when a judge doesn't allow something or does.
It seems very arbitrary.
Yeah, for sure. So you believe that Barbara killed Russell intentionally. Do you believe that she also killed Larry Ford intentionally, or is there a chance that Larry Ford's death was an accident and she just saw that and said, oh, accidents happen. Maybe the same thing could happen to Russ.
No, I believe that she intentionally killed both of her husbands.
Yeah, she seems like a very cold-blooded kind of person. I didn't talk much about her reaction to their deaths, but from everything I read, she wasn't emotional. She didn't seem at all upset. Like her, people act differently.
People act
We
differently.
know, but she also didn't seem especially upset by things.
Do you think that she killed both of her husbands?
I do, yeah. And I do wish, like you said, there may not have been enough evidence to make a, arrest of her in the Larry Ford case, but it makes me sad that Larry Ford, has no justice.
Absolutely. I think that we should start a new drinking game. Every time you say for sure, the audience has to drink. And every time I say absolutely, the audience has to drink. I think we both are guilty of using those words an awful lot.
It could be our New Year's resolution.
To say them more or less.
To say them less.
And I just mean water because people should be more hydrated. So, just take it.
We just want people to be hydrated.
Russell was very forgiving to Barbara. He wanted to reconcile their marriage and he forgave the financial crimes, which are pretty great.
Yeah.
And he forgave the affair and the whole, like the big lies about the book.
Yeah.
Should he have forgiven her?
No. I would have a really hard time getting past, even one of those things, but all of them together.
Those were pretty big lies.
Huge.
And I think when you're telling those big lies to your spouse who, it's supposed to be your most trusted person, that you would never lie. And I think that I understand wanting to save your marriage.
Yeah. I can only speculate, on the money side of things, maybe he felt guilty because he had kind of let her handle all that stuff because he was like, I'm not good with money, so you handle it. Maybe he was like, oh, I should have been more on top of things or something. But
it wasn't like she bought, too many clothes or makeup or whatever it was. Like these were major financial crimes. Like she was, changing the letterhead on, I feel like those were pretty big red flags.
Yeah, they should have been.
Well, how do you feel your younger self did on this case?
Not terribly, but I did rewrite a lot of it. When I look back at the original script, I wrote everything in the present tense for some strange reason. Like Russ goes and does this, and then Barb does this, and so it was not very good from that perspective. But I think
I didn't really change mine because I thought that was kind of one of the fun things about this is going back and making fun of how bad we were. It was that bad.
Well, the other thing that I didn't do in the original, I didn't share any background about Russell and Barbara, and I think we've learned over time that we really like to get to know the people
if we can,
in the case, if we can, and learn a little bit about their upbringing because it really does tell you more about who they became.
Do you remember why you picked this as your first case? Because this isn't a well-known case, right?
I really have no idea why I picked this as my first case. There was a book about the case that I read. It was called Before He Wakes by Jerry Bledsoe, and I do remember it was a very good book. And so if you want to go deeper into the case, definitely recommend that. We hope you enjoyed this rewind episode of Barbara and Russell Steger.
You talked in the beginning of the episode about the pink frosted cookies. If it was the last pink frosted peppermint cookie that you were going to have, like I'm probably not going to make them again until next Christmas.
Oh, okay.
And you knew that a cat licked it. Would you eat the cookie, or would that be enough for you to be like, yeah, I'm not going to eat that cookie?
Is this a purely hypothetical question? Because it sounds very specific to me.
Well, I just want you to answer it, please.
If it was the last one, I would probably eat it. Cats' tongues are very clean.
Cite your source.
If I was desperate, I would eat it, yes. And would you?
Yeah, I would.
Okay, well, I'm glad we're on the same page.
I didn't have to think about it for too long. But Cosmo came in here and jumped up on the table and started licking the cookie. And we were talking, so I couldn't stop him. So, yeah, he licked the pink cookie.
Incorrigible, that
we could just give it to someone else.
And just not tell them.
Right, not tell them.
All right.
Maybe if we froze it, it would, get rid of any cat germs.
Great, good thinking.
I think most people Oh, I don't know. Do you eat or drink after your pet? I'm
No,
curious.
no.
Like
Normally,
some
I would
people
not.
would share like their cereal milk with their
Yes.
animal.
Yeah.
Cosmo always sniffs, you know this well. He always sniffs what I'm eating, but
Hmm.
very rarely takes a bite
Right. But
or
he gets
licks
really
it.
close to it. Like he
He
gets like
does.
within a couple of centimeters of
Yes, and
your food.
that's absolutely my fault. I have made a monster.
Yeah.
But I know you have a lot of questions for me, and
Well,
I'm nervous
oh,
because I have the memory of a fruit fly, and
don't be
I'm
nervous.
not going to be able to remember anything that
It's
occurred
okay.
in
All
2025.
you can do is your best. But 2025 is drawing to a close, so I thought it would be a good time to reflect on the
Hmm.
past year and maybe look forward to 2026. So we'll start off easy.
Okay.
What was the favorite movie or TV show that you watched in 2025? Doesn't have to have come out in 2025, but something that you remember that you enjoyed.
I don't know. What about you?
I think, and I think this might be your answer too, we saw a movie called Sinners, which we both really, really loved. It was with Michael B. Jordan. It was like kind of a horror
I think most
film.
people know what Sinners is. I think it didn't get a lot of it as much as
No,
attention
it
as you
didn't.
would have thought when it first came
It
out,
was
but
just so good. It was so
we saw it I think the first weekend it came out and we didn't
yeah,
know anything about it. I
right.
think I was kind of like, holy cow, in the first I think it was literally like 45 minutes. I was like, is Michael Jordan playing both parts? I really
Hmm.
couldn't figure that out. But
Yeah,
yeah, that was really
it
good.
was very creative.
There was a TV show that I watched called Adolescence. I don't think you
Oh yeah,
watched
I
it.
have not watched
Holy
that.
cow. It's very, very dark, but that was really well done. I bet a lot of our listeners have already watched that.
I've heard that people like that a lot.
Just the other day, just 2 days ago, I started watching I Love LA on HBO, and it's not meant for people my age. Which I know is a theme, recurring theme for me is watching shows that I have no business watching.
Hmm.
But you know,
Watch any show you want. You
I know,
shouldn't.
I know, but I that was really kind of fresh and
Yeah.
funny, and I like that. And I am gonna give Heated Rivalry another shout out.
Oh
I
yeah.
haven't finished that, but
Yeah.
you never watched.
No, I haven't
I do
watched
not
that.
recommend that for you or most men in your age group.
Well, I was going to give an honorable mention of movies for Companion. That was another one I really liked and I thought was really creative and inventive.
No recollection of that.
That was the one with the girl who was she was like a robot essentially, but she didn't know she was a robot.
I'm gonna take your word for it.
All right. How about least favorite? Do you have a least favorite movie?
I do actually.
Yes.
Do you know what it is?
I might, because it might be the same as
A
mine.
Naked Gun.
Oh, no, not the same as
I
mine.
was just looking at Reddit this morning because you had given me these questions
Hmm.
beforehand because you're a true gentleman and you know that I have the memory of what was Dory? A Tang? But I was looking on Reddit and a lot of people were saying that that was one of their favorite
Yeah.
movies. And I was really disappointed by it because like the original ones were so fresh and funny. And I just felt like Liam Neeson, love him, but I don't think he delivered as Frank Drebin
Yeah.
Jr.
I was disappointed in it too.
Yeah, it just wasn't, it just seems really forced.
Yeah, I agree with you, but my least favorite was Materialists. Do you remember that
Oh,
movie?
yeah, that was so
with-
bad too. You're right.
Yeah,
Oh my
with-
God.
what's her name?
It was comically bad. Dakota Johnson.
Dakota Johnson. Yeah, it was just so bad. And Pedro Pascal. And
The plot was just like, I want you guys to watch it just because it was so like, are you kidding?
But again, a lot of people like that movie. If you look at the reviews,
Well, 'cause everyone
they're
loves
pretty
Pedro
good.
Pascal, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
I guess so. All right, let's move on to books. Favorite book that you read this year?
Nobody Knows You're Here. I loved that book. There was a few I read that are really good, but that's the only one that I wrote down.
Yeah.
How about you?
My favorite was a book I read very early in the year called James by Percival Everett. It was basically a retelling of Mark Twain's Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, and it was just really, really well done.
I have not read that. I need to read
It was
that.
so good.
I'm looking at my Goodreads really quick because I want to give you guys a few books that you could read between Christmas and New Year. Wild Dark Shore, if you haven't read that, by Charlotte McConaughey. That was excellent. Broken Country by Claire Leslie Hall, I really liked a lot. A book called The Last Love Note by Emma Gray. And I'm going to give you one more. I said it already, but Nobody Knows You're Here by Bryn Greenwood. Also, if you're in a book club, there is a book I read called Culpability by Bruce Holsinger that I was really an interesting book. And you haven't read that one, so
No.
I'm going to give you that one as a homework assignment.
Excellent.
There was a book that I really hated called My Friends by Frederick Bachman that a lot of people really loved, but I hated it.
Well, every book is not for every person,
Right, exactly.
for sure. All right, let's shift gears and talk about the podcast a little bit.
What podcast?
Story, ours,
Oh, okay.
this one, what story from the last year is one that has stuck with you?
Off the top of my head, Betty Broderick will never leave me.
Yeah.
And I am very proud of the work that I did on that one.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't say that about every case. I do my best on every case, but I feel like I felt like I really knew Betty and that I told her story pretty well.
Yeah.
And can I speak for you? The story about Molly and Jason, help me out with their last name. Corbett. I thought you did an outstanding job on that case.
Oh, thank you. That was definitely one that I felt very proud of, but I also really emotionally connected to me. But the one I was going to mention that has stuck with me is the Dr. Anthony Pignataro one.
Yeah.
Because something about the idea of a doctor that you trust these people, you just trust them with your life, literally. And for someone to be that evil and careless and just, bad at what they do is just so scary. All right, well, enough about 2025. Let's look forward to 2026. What kind of cases do you want to explore more as we go into next year?
We talked about this a little bit before, but we've been doing this for 3.5 years, and I want to branch out a little bit and maybe do a few more cases that aren't Love, Marry, Kill cases, just a few more interesting true crime cases. So if you have a recommendation for a case that's a little different than what we've covered before, let us know.
Yeah, I think it's been really great, doing Love, Marry, Kill type cases that are about relationships because it allows us to talk about relationship dynamics and things like that. But it also does limit a little bit what we can cover. So
I feel like we feel really comfortable talking about married couples because we are a married couple.
Right,
and
exactly.
yeah, but it'll be interesting to do some different
branch
cases
out a little
this year.
bit.
Yeah. What about personally? What are some goals that you have set for yourself for 2026?
I haven't set any goals for myself.
No, because you're doing so
Every
well.
year we talk about resolutions on the podcast, and every year I've pretty much, if I look back, I'm like, I didn't really meet my resolutions for this past year. So I don't know. I really have not thought about kind of personal goals for 2026. Have you?
I have. And this break that we're taking, I'm trying to be more intentional with my time. That's really a huge goal of mine because life is fast.
It sure
and
is.
It goes by and you're going to miss it if you don't slow down. And I'm just trying to use my time better and not be online as much, not do doom scroll. 2025, I think for me personally was not my best year. I think my mental health flagged a little bit and I needed to just take better care of my physical and mental health. So that is my goal for 2026.
Sounds like a very good goal. Can I just adopt yours then as my own also?
Well, yeah, I think we could all, be more intentional with our time. I don't know how you especially do it. You do a lot. I know, okay, I'm not giving myself too much credit here, but I alleviate some of the stress in your life by the things that I do.
Yeah, a lot of it.
Like by cooking and doing all a lot of the wifely duties. But you also do an awful lot, and I hope in 2026 that you and I can spend more meaningful time. Like we love doing the podcast, but like I said, I really feel like I need to sometimes take a little more downtime, and I know you do too.
Yeah.
So it might mean taking some breaks from the podcast. We've tried really hard not to do that. But if there's one thing I would want the listeners to know, it's that there's just two of us doing this. And sometimes it does become overwhelming and we sacrifice our personal time to pump out episodes. And
yeah, it does. And we do love what we do, but it does get to be a lot with all the other day-to-day stuff we have going on too.
Yeah, and because we can't support ourselves financially by doing the podcast, I just want people to remember sometimes that we're doing our best, but, all the aspects all the balls that we have in the air, sometimes it's hard to keep them all up in the air. So,
well, we hope that whatever personal goals you've set for yourself in 2026, that you meet and surpass beyond your wildest expectations.
Well, we hope that you enjoyed our Rewind episodes. But next Monday, it's back to normal. We love you guys so much. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Happy 2026.
Until next time.
Don't kill your husband.
And don't kill your wife.
Happy New Year!